All right, we're live. Welcome to the very first ever HoosierIllustrated.com post-game wrap-up show for Indiana football. This is John Alden from In Touch with Indiana Sports alongside with Kyler Staley. How you doing? Live from Memorial Stadium, my friend.
I'm doing good. It's a little humid out right now, but it's cooling down. So it's not 90 and humid, which is excellent, but still a little sticky. I still feel a little swollen up being down here. And also praying that my Wi-Fi and the internet connection stays up to par. So other than that, we're doing just good.
Getting your first reps in of the season as Indiana kicks off things against Florida International, gets the 31-7 victory at home to kick off the Kurt Signetti era. A lot of different things to take away from this game. Obviously, two totally different halves. I hate to use the old cliche of a tale of two halves, but that's honestly what this was. It looked like a very polished offensive unit in the first half, and then you had a very solid defensive performance all the way around. You did have a bit of a kind of a breakdown there towards the end of the second quarter, but you didn't blank them in the second half, and the offense kind of began to stutter in the second half as things got rolling. A lot more penalties as well. What are kind of your early thoughts as a whole, whether it be the offense, the defense? What are you kind of thinking from this game?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: the game went about it as I expected. I'm not calling myself a guru or anything like that, but I expected this game to be kind of a beatdown, but at the same time, sloppy in a lot of the times as well. So obviously, Indiana started off pretty hot. Went up 21-0, got pretty lackadaisical towards the end of the second half. Or not second half, second quarter, and that carried over just a little bit over to the third. But then they really, they picked it up, just to finish out strong. And obviously, they got that last kind of touchdown to get that 31 points. So saw a little bit of everything today, I think, with Indiana. Got to see Curtis Rourke, see what he's about. You also got to see what really stands out to me, and I think is going to be a major weapon for Indiana all season long, is their depth when it comes to their skilled players is fantastic. You expected Sarrett and McCauley to be the main guys today or whatever, but I'll make an argument that was Miles Price and Omar Cooper Jr. And the running backs. You got to see a balanced running back attack. But to me, it's kind of clear, and I think they're both the number one quarterback. You'll look at Tyson Lawton and Justice Ellison. I think they're both going to share those duties, and it's kind of like a thunder and lightning type of duo there. But sloppy at times, but Indiana, obviously got the job done in pretty dominating fashion.
Yeah, a couple of quick stats. You mentioned the run game and the myriad of receivers that did well. Elijah Green, 82 yards. Tyson Lawton, 74 yards, 2 touchdowns. Forgot to mention Elijah Green's untouched touchdown in the game. Miles Price, 12 yards. Kalon Black, 7 yards. And then Curtis Rourke had only 3 rushing. You don't really expect much from the quarterback, of course. And then the receiver room, very impressive. Omar Cooper with 45 yards. Zach Corton, the tight end, gets a touchdown and 36 yards. Miles Cross gets a reception with 30 yards. Miles Price, 29 yards. Justice Ellison had a nice reception for 19 yards. And then Surratt with 12 and McCulley 9. And when McCulley is not your primary receiver, as you mentioned, as we kind of talked about all off season long, that's definitely a good sign for the future when it comes to the offense. Obviously, there's a lot of kinks to work out on both sides of the ball, but there's definitely a good foundation that was laid here tonight, and you're going to get a chance to do the same thing next week when you play an even worse opponent in Western Illinois. And on top of that, it's good to see pretty much everybody come away from this game healthy, and just a lot of positives, even though it wasn't a 100% complete performance, which we weren't expecting. It's a step in the right direction, and there's not much more you probably could have asked for in an opening game like this.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you could ask them to clean up their penalties. A lot of those penalties are just dumb mistakes at the end of the day, very mental mistakes. But you mentioned, most of the people came away injury free. However, Donovan McCauley, you don't know exactly what his health is. He obviously got hurt in the second half. It looked to be a head neck injury type of thing. And from talking to Signetti after the game, us media said that he was ruled ineligible to come back into the game. So
Okay.
Whatever that is, obviously you got to monitor that because he is your number one wide receiver. Even before the injury, he wasn't really a factor today. And I'm going to credit a lot of that to FIU's defense. I think they had a defensive game plan was to double cover him and make sure that Indiana had to use other weapons, which turned out to be pretty good because it looks like Kirsch Rourke has really built a connection with all of his wide receivers. And even Zach Horton as well. I thought he was fantastic at the tight end position. Really bailed Indiana out in a couple of big plays. And I think he had a touchdown, if I can remember correctly.
He did. He has the first touchdown, yes.
Yep. And then obviously Tyson Lawton had 2 touchdowns there as well, and then Green had the last one there. But just a balanced attack, really. I thought the offensive line looked pretty solid for the most part. There's kinks, obviously, you got to work out, with every position. Defense, they got to learn to play. They got to learn to play when they're fatigued, and they got to learn to keep it locked in as well. So it's week 1. There's going to be mistakes. It's going to be nasty at times, but the fact is that Indiana got, a pretty dominant win over against a team that, wasn't up to their par. And you have to think, during the Tom Allen eras, this probably would have been a game that Indiana struggled with, and they wouldn't have blown out this team. So I think that's just good to see at the end of the day.
And there were moments where I do think, especially in the second half, where people may have been a little concerned. Obviously, it took Indiana pretty much the entirety of the third and fourth quarter to find the end zone until we had that long touchdown run. So there was definitely some things to be concerned about as the game moved along. But I do think if I'm picking out one particular part of the team that looks a lot different compared to last season, it's the offensive line. And I know when it comes to them with pass protection, they weren't outstanding. But if you're looking at the different holes that the line was able to open up throughout the game, it's definitely a very positive sign moving forward, because I feel like, thankfully, Bob Bostad's now had a couple of years under his belt to really kind of lay his foundation with the offensive line. And it really was a concern, especially when you were losing guys like Nick Kidwell a few weeks before the season. But it's definitely a good sign moving forward, especially if we continue to see the running game be a major part of this offense. And it's also good when you have a good stable of running backs that are going to be able to kind of take turns carrying the load. Obviously, Tyson Lawton kind of ended up being the big name for the night, but that doesn't mean it can't be one of the other backs in one of these games moving forward. So really, really positive when it comes to the running game and the offensive line in particular. And I'm excited to see as the season goes along, how they will look moving forward. And especially if they can get the pass protection down and Curtis Ward can be protected a little better, I think that's going to be really good for the Hoosiers this year.
Yeah, I mean, their run blocking was, I think, pretty outstanding today. Pass blocking probably needs a lot more work, especially with that. But Curtis Rourke's a very, very smart and savvy quarterback, veteran quarterback, and I thought he did a pretty good job of avoiding those sacks as well. Now, there was a couple, obviously that he just couldn't avoid, but I thought he was very immobile. Honestly, he was a lot more mobile than what I thought that he was as a quarterback. Yeah. So that's really good to see. That's just another weapon for Indiana. But you talk about the run game as well. It's just those backs are really experienced, very smart running back room, and they have really good chemistry with one another. There's no egos on that team or in that group, you would say. They really communicate with one another, and they just go out there and they play. When their number's called, they're going out there. And Tyson Lawton and Justice Ellison, I mean, they were dominant, physical, dominant, running the ball today. Really powerful running backs, really, really powerful running backs, and pretty versatile running backs as well. I remember one play with Justice Ellison going out for a wider pass or whatever and caught the ball. I think it was on a third down as well, near the end zone. So that's really good to see. I think this Indiana team, offensive wise, just overall, there's a lot of confidence on this, on that unit, on that side of the ball. They know how good they are. They know how good they can be. It's just about cleaning it up. Next week's a good opportunity for them to just clean up more when it comes to the silly penalties and just, clean up the pass blocking, just certain things like that. But I think they're just going to continue to build and build and build. And I really like the foundation that they set in stone today as far as the offensive side of the ball is concerned.
And I don't want to say I hate the fact that they're going down in the level actually, I'll just keep it at that because I've been saying it for a while. But I do understand when you have a first year, actually, he's not really a first year head coach. It's his first year with Indiana, of course, and first year at the Power 4 level. But when you're taking a step down in competition, when you go from FIU to an FCS opponent, and nonetheless, it is an FCS opponent. I don't know if you know this, Kyle. They were 0-11 last year. The Western Illinois Leathernecks went 0-11. So I would go as far as to say if it's not an absolute beatdown next week, if you're in a competitive game with a team like that. And again, maybe they flip their roster. Maybe they have a whole bunch of new things going on. Maybe I'll take a look at that this week before they actually play them. But if Indiana doesn't take care of business from start to finish, maybe you start to be a little concerned. I don't want to overreact to something like that, but it's definitely an opportunity next week for Indiana to continue to improve. I don't want to call it a get right game because there's nothing, I mean, get right in terms of clean up the penalties, that type of stuff, but it's obviously an opportunity to go 2-0 before you head down to UCLA in week 3. But definitely it's tough to learn a whole lot about the big picture of your team in these early weeks whenever you're not playing the best of competition. But thankfully, this is the first time this year we've finally gotten to see an actual product on the field as opposed to what we saw in the spring game when they were playing each other. The talk is finally at rest. We've finally seen Curt Cignetti put pen to paper, so to speak, and put something on the field that I believe for the most part fans are excited about. I don't want to act like that things are diminished after one performance because they definitely aren't. There's just not a lot to, other than what you saw, there's not a whole lot to, I guess, get super excited about. And I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to spin my wheels a little bit, but either way, it's FIU. They got the win 31-7, and they move on to Western Illinois from here.
Yep. I mean, next week's another get right game. They really need it. They're not ready to go to UCLA just quite yet. They really need another game in between. You're going to find you found out a lot about this Indiana team today. You'll find out a lot more next week about them. But you're going to find out everything you really need to know early on in the season when they play at UCLA. That'll be the big game. Obviously, it's an opponent that's going to be a lot tougher in competition. They're a Big Ten opponent. You know, that game means a lot more at the end of the day. But you talk about the fans and everything. One thing I just want to point out, I mean, still struggling to keep fans in at halftime. Saw that. So that's the thing that Cignetti even brought up. Aiden Fisher brought
I
it
heard
up.
that. Okay, yeah, so, tell me more about about some of that.
Let's be honest with you. It's FIU. It was hot, humid, so you'll kind of give them a little bit of a pass at the end of the day. But I will say this: the first half, the student section was completely full. It was packed. It looked awesome, and that's a lot of potential of what this program can be and stuff. So it's not going to change overnight. At the end of the day, winning's all that matters. So just keep winning, and a lot of good things happen for Cignetti and for these Hoosiers. So. I mean, just to kind of sum up everything, today went about as expected, I think, at the end of the day. They covered the spread. I know there's probably people that
I was concerned about that.
They were probably pretty concerned about it, so they covered the spread. And even the spread even went up 3 points from when it went to kickoff. So I think it went from like 21 to like
23 and a half, I think, was the final
like
spread.
that.
Something like that.
They covered it. I guess a lot of people are going to be a lot of Elijah Green fans after tonight. So big run and everything. So, but for the most part, people stayed healthy tonight. You got to stay healthy next week. You don't know if Donovan McCauley's going to play next week or not. Right now, probably not going to play. That's just kind of my thoughts with it.
You almost want to – I don't want to say you want to hold him out even if he is healthy, but we've talked before about games against these types of opponents. You want to come out as healthy as possible from them. So even if he's questionable, even though you'd love to get him some more reps, you almost want to keep him out of the lineup just to be safe.
I think that'd be an awesome – not awesome, but I think that would be a smart
the safe move.
Yeah, it would be a safe move. And then obviously UCLA, you're playing against them or whatever, you know, that's less film that they have on McCauley. So if he's healthy enough to play. So you just kind of look at it that way from a coaching standpoint. But sloppy game at times today. Indiana was dominant as well. And I got to say this, that Indiana defense, they swarmed the ball, man. They are a team that is just a bunch of ball hawks on that team. And they're going to go after the ball. There's physical, and I think Aiden Fisher, perfect quarterback for that defense as well. So he's definitely the leader of this team, I think, in a lot of ways. So, and he's going to be a superstar this year, I think, at the Big Ten level even. So was really, really impressed on that side of the ball.
Well, good stuff. And we'll wrap up here in just a second. I do want to mention something. I meant to bring this up at the beginning of the show, but I was more so concerned about, you know, this being our very first live production. Wanted to make sure the airplane took off, so I didn't really think about it. But in the future, for those of you who are watching this now, or maybe watching it later on in the day or the evening, tomorrow, whatever it may be, if you want to send us a message, a voice message, and let your voice be heard on future post-game wrap-up shows, you can do so at 502-830-9194. 888-995, or you can contribute on the YouTube comment section and let us know what you thought about the game. Would love to see if we can do something like that. Get a little interactive here on the HoosierIllustrated.com post-game wrap-up show. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on this one, Kyler?
Hey, football season's back, man. That's the most important thing at the end of the day. So it was fun to be back out here. It's a grind at the end of the day for all parties involved, but it was fun to be back out there. I thought, for the most part, people are pretty excited about this Indiana team. There was definitely a different buzz than it has been, obviously. And, I think Cignetti's got a great foundation already built. It's just continuing to build this season and clean up the sloppiness and have a really good, somewhat finished product, by the time the midway point of the season comes up, and really start to compete against some of the tougher teams.
Well, good stuff. Kyler Staley, appreciate you as always. Get out of that humidity, and we'll look forward to all you may have coming up at HoosierIllustrated.com later on this week, my friend.
Sounds good, man.
This has been the very first ever live production on Hoosier Illustrated's YouTube page, the HoosierIllustrated.com postgame wrap-up show. And we'll be back to do it again next Friday, but also be sure to check out In Touch with Indiana Sports this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Mitchell Page is going to join us to give his thoughts on the very first Indiana football game under Curt Cignetti. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him on Monday's show. But until then, appreciate you all checking this out. We'll do it again on Friday. This has been Hoosier Illustrated's post-game wrap-up show for Indiana football.